Welcome to episode number 322, where I'm talking about the role of caretaking for loved ones. And Ayurveda can teach us a lot about this, and in particular, how each dosha may react to the unexpected situation many of us find ourselves in where we're caring for loved ones. So please stay tuned. Hi there, I'm your host Colette, and on this podcast I will be sharing the teachings of Ayurveda, yoga, and holistic health practices. Now, if you're new to Ayurveda, I recommend checking out the first couple of episodes where I do an introduction to Ayurveda and the mind-body types. Thanks for listening, and now here's a new episode. This episode is sponsored by Kerala Ayurveda. Did you know that 25% of health success for an individual's Ayurvedic protocol is dependent on the quality of their herbal formulations? At Kerala Ayurveda, every herb and formulation is grown and harvested according to ancient tradition and held to the highest standards for safety. On KeralaAyurveda.store, you'll find a variety of Ayurvedic products and supplements for a range of needs, including mind, skin, digestion, immunity, weight management, and more. Visit KeralaAyurveda.us/store to learn more and use the code ELEMENTS10KA for 10% off your first order. You'll find all the details and link in the show notes. Hey there, it's Colette, and I'm doing a solo episode today. And first of all, I want to apologize for the sound quality. But due to unexpected schedule changes at the start of this year, I'm without my usual podcast microphone, so please bear with me. Now, due to these changes in my schedule has been thrown off, and I'm just going with the flow rather than let these changes cause stress. And so in this episode today, I'm going to talk about what's going on for me, the start of the year, the lessons I'm learning, and how Ayurveda has helped me during this time. So I enjoyed Christmas with my family in Ireland. And as I've mentioned in previous episodes, my mother has dementia, and at this stage in her illness, she needs help with everything and requires constant care. Now, we're very fortunate that we can care for my mother at home with the assistance of wonderful professional carers who help daily. However, due to unexpected scheduling issues at the start of the year, the carers were not available. And so instead of returning to France, where I live, I'm extending my stay in Ireland to help take care of my mother. Now, it's a pleasure to do it. And as I've mentioned in past episode, I took care of my mother during COVID along with my father. So I'm very comfortable taking care of my mother. And if there's one valuable life lesson I've learned, and it's come from Eckhart Tolle, is to accept what arises. Because if we don't accept what is, then it will result in stress. Wanting a situation to be something other than what it is going to lead to a lot of stress and frustration and so on. And it's ultimately going to have a negative effect on our physical and mental health. So I'm looking at this schedule change as a great opportunity to have some quality time with my mother and father. And I will just figure out everything else, just like the podcast episodes I'm recording. It's like, okay, I'll have to use my iPhone earpods and record that way. And thankfully, I work online, so I can continue working around caring for my mother and continue with my consultations and everything that I need to do for work. And so when it came to recording this week's episode, I just decided to continue going with the flow and talk about what is. So here's what is happening for me at this stage of life. My parents are aging, and it can be a challenging phase of life, as not only are there challenges with parents' health, but also dealing with the emotional side of these changes, which of course we will all need to navigate at some stage in our lives where our loved ones have declining health. So I'm going to share my story and experience with you, and maybe it'll help some of you out there. My mother's dementia has progressed over the past decade. And during COVID, I spent 10 months with my parents. And this was probably the most challenging time, as this was the biggest decline in my mother's health. There was a sharp decline during COVID. And during that time where it was just me and my father taking care of my father was really grieving the loss of my mother and who she used to be, and going through the process of accepting that she would not return to her normal self and needed more care. And we certainly went through some tough times then, as my mother experienced some anxious episodes. Now, thankfully, they were very few and far between. And in general, she does not experience any anxiety or frustration or anger that can come with dementia sometimes. Her kapha constitution means that she's generally very calm and content, which we are extremely grateful for. But during COVID, I went through my own challenges with this situation while taking care of my mother, and it spanned the whole spectrum of emotions, from sadness to grief to frustration. Now, in hindsight, I don't think it's a good idea for a family member to be taking care of a loved one 24/7, but we didn't have a choice during COVID, as my siblings, who all live close to my parents, have children. And we couldn't take the risk of anybody else coming into my parents' home during COVID, and the possibility of my mother contracting COVID and having to go to hospital, because that would have been traumatizing as a dementia patient. So we're very fortunate that neither of my parents ever got COVID. Now, the reason I say that I think it's not a good idea for a family member to care for a loved one 24/7, and particularly if it's a situation where the loved one needs full-time care, is because there's so much emotional attachment, and it can be physically, mentally, and emotionally draining for the carer. I really think it's best to have professionals doing the day-to-day care, so that you can enjoy the time you have with your loved one rather than being their primary carer. Now, of course, sometimes we don't have a choice, like our family situation during COVID, or the financial burden of hiring professionals may be too much. So each case is different. And of course, this is just my personal opinion and personal experience. However, if there is a choice, my experience has taught me that having professionals take care of the day-to-day care of the individual, and then enjoying the time we have with a loved one. And that may be feeding them or reading to them or just sitting with them. None of us are taught how to deal with this time. And it's challenging, as not only are we seeing our loved ones decline in health, but we're also dealing with our own and our family's emotional reaction to it. I have 5 siblings, 3 sisters and 2 brothers. And as I said, they all live within a few miles of my parents. And it was really interesting to witness each sibling's reaction to my mother's declining health, because of course, each sibling has their own unique constitution and their own relationship with my mother and their own way of processing what was happening. In our Western society, we don't like to talk about aging and sickness and death. And so when it happens, we can feel really unprepared. Ayurveda has really helped me so much during this time with accepting the situation, understanding my mother's condition, and understanding my siblings' reaction. As I just looked at the tendencies of the doshas, and this has helped me have more compassion and understanding for each person's reaction to my mother's health situation. So I'm going to share with you now how each dosha may react to these changes in health, or aging parents, or just having to be carers. So the people with more vata dosha in their constitution are, as we know, always on the move, really social butterflies. And so when it comes to reduced mobility due to a loved one's declining health, or maybe it's their own declining health, and where they may have to slow down themselves or may have to slow down to take care of a loved one, this can result in a feeling of being trapped for vata. It can also result in anxiety or fear. And the initial reaction for vata when it's a fearful situation like that of being trapped may be to run. and to flee the situation. So that may be one of the reactions of a person with high Vata, is just to get away from the situation, to run away at first. The Vata dosha will need lots of support and reassurance and connection, especially if they're caring for others. There will be a need to maintain some social interaction if possible. So if a person with a high Vata constitution is caring for a loved one, they still need to maintain some social interaction so they don't feel that sense of feeling trapped and that their social butterfly wings are clipped. So they will need some support with the care, and they will also need to receive some grounding and calming nourishment with food and lifestyle and therapies for their physical and emotional health. So maybe they'll want to do some Shirodhara, Abhyanga, acupuncture, and also maybe talk to somebody during this time about their emotions and about their feelings, getting professional therapy. And of course, making sure they're making time for mindfulness practices to keep their nervous system calm so that they can be there to support a loved one. And people with a high Pitta constitution, well, they're normally the leaders. They're normally the ones that are organizing everyone, and they like to feel in control. Now, when there's a loved one's health declining, or maybe their own health, they're going to feel like they're losing control. And this can result in trying to force control in an uncontrollable situation like illness, which could lead to more anger, frustration, and possibly explosive outbursts. So understanding that under this fiery exterior is a person who's feeling powerless. And this can help to promote compassion for them. Because when we're dealing with a loved one's declining health and we see somebody reacting angrily or trying to control situations, it can be really hard to understand. But if we understand that, okay, I see your fiery reaction, but I know underneath it, you're feeling scared and you're feeling like you're losing control. And this will help to have compassion for that person who's having this fiery reaction. So a person with a high Pitta constitution during this stage of feeling like they're losing control will need calming practices. And this will help support the fiery, sharp, and intense reaction of Pitta in a stressful situation. So Pitta pacifying diet, cooling foods, and calming practices like meditation, pranayama, yoga, shitali cooling breath. All these will help calm a Pitta person. Time in nature, taking time away from intense activities, because again, Pitta will want to control, may throw themselves into work or throw themselves into a project where they can get that sense of control. And so making time for calming practices, which can be hard during this time because Pitta often just dives into something which is going to consume them rather than deal with this situation where they're losing control. But it's important to remember that it's important to take that time out to calm that fire, because otherwise it will lead into Pitta aggravation, Pitta illnesses physically and mentally. And those people with a high Kapha dosha in their constitution, with their more nurturing, empathetic, and their natural caring qualities, will want to take on the caring role. They're natural carers. However, Kapha can become possessive and there can be too much attachment, which can lead to them throwing themselves into the caring role and forgetting about their own self-care and withdrawing from social activities. And this can lead to heaviness, inertia, and maybe feeling down or depressed because they're so involved in the care of their loved ones. So understanding that Kapha can take too much of a caring role and forget about taking care of themselves, suppressing their own emotions, that's really important to understand. And normally it's that person with a high Kapha constitution who takes on all the responsibilities, when maybe those with a Pitta and Vata constitution are running away from the situation. The Kapha is the one who's left dealing with everything. And so it's really important for a person with a high kapha constitution, understanding that they are natural caregivers. They're fantastic at caregiving. However, they need support in their role as a caregiver. And so while they may take on the bulk of the caregiving, they need to put their own self-care as a priority first, making sure that they delegate tasks, making sure that they're not withdrawing from their social life and their self-care. They need exercise to stimulate them. They need to make sure that they're prioritizing their physical and mental health. And so that's really important for those with a high kapha constitution. Prioritizing their self-care, getting their exercise first before going into that daily caregiving role, prioritizing their health, making sure that they're having kapha pacifying foods, make sure that they're getting out there with social interactions, make sure that they're taking care of their health so they don't go into that heaviness and sluggishness of kapha, which of course we know can lead to kapha imbalances physically and mentally. So Ayurveda can really help us understand these situations, have compassion for others, and understand how other doshas react to changing situations and uncontrollable situations like illness, sickness, and death. Ayurveda, of course, helps us to maintain balance during these times. And at the moment, I'm really focusing on my daily self-care practices, keeping my body and mind in balance so that I can be there for my mother. And this whole experience has taught me how to accept, as I mentioned, what is, what's arising, and just go with the flow rather than trying to force anything. Of course, it has also highlighted the importance of preventative healthcare. And I can see how my mother's condition has progressed over the years. My mother always had a lot of problems with her digestive health, took a lot of over-the-counter medication to cover up the symptoms. And this, unfortunately, was not solving the root problem. Now, with my education in Ayurveda, I now understand that digestive problems can be the root of disease in the body and mind. And by taking care of our health throughout our lives, we can give ourselves the best possible foundation for good health, vitality, and longevity. Now, if you want support on your health journey, if you want to take care of your health, prevent illnesses from happening, and have that vitality and longevity into old age, then please check out my online services. I have the discounted group Digestive Reset Cleanse starting February 2nd, just a few weeks away. Come join us as we go through this cleansing process in a group. There's a private forum where we can support each other and hold each other accountable. This cleanse comes with a private 90-minute online consultation with me so that I can tailor the cleanse to your current health status. And in the cleanse, there's 1 week of preparation, 1 week of cleansing, and the final week is rejuvenation, where we're reintroducing foods. There's no fasting in this cleanse, so you don't have to worry about fasting for long periods. It's very doable while you're working. And all the webinars, the yoga videos, the mindfulness tutorials are all pre-recorded. So you can join us from anywhere in the world. And I normally have a great international community going through the process. If you want more details on the cleanse, I talk about it in episode number 244. Now, I also offer other online services like my online consultations, where I put together a strategy for your diet, lifestyle, self-care, and mindfulness practices to help you maintain balance and prevent illness. And of course, I address any current imbalances you may have. And I do private digestive reset cleanses. So if that discounted group cleanse date of February 2nd doesn't work for you, you can choose a private cleanse and choose your own dates. And the cleanse structure is the same. You just have me one-on-one for support rather than the group. And I also have the educational program, the Daily Habits for a Holistic Health program. And if you have any questions before you book any of my online services, then please take advantage of my free 15-minute online services inquiry call, where we can hop on Zoom and I can answer all of your questions. If you think that this episode will be helpful to family or friends, then please share it with them. And if you haven't already subscribed or followed the podcast, please do so, and the new episodes will automatically download for you. If you would like to rate and review the podcast, I would really appreciate that, as this would help others find this valuable information from Ayurveda. Thank you so much for tuning in. And until next time, take good care of yourself, be well, and bye for now. Slán go fóill.